Well, hello, everybody, and welcome back to your favorite show on the internet, Raw Law Unfiltered, with your favorite host, the DUI Guy Plus. Today, folks, I get a chance to finally go back into my element, one of my favorite things to do of all time, and that is to read and analyze human behavior, body language, and give it all to you in its purest, rawest form that I possibly can. Because one thing I've learned about reading a jury over the years now is that there really is a wrong way to do it. I'll give you an example. Let's say a witness says, and it was 8 p.m. when this happened, and one of the jurors is going to scratch their nose. If you simply report, the witness said it happened at 8 p.m. and one of the jurors scratched their nose, that's one thing. But the minute you begin to try and attribute your own personal impression as to what that might mean, you have to be very, very careful, because your thoughts on what the nose scratch means could be completely biased. There are certain body language cues that are universal. For instance, let's say like a pressing of the temple, or like putting your palm in your hand, which indicates boredom. This indicates like maybe frustration or worry. This could be anxiety. It could be that the juror is cold, this is almost universally indicative of interest, something like that, or like this, which some of the jurors were doing today. There was one juror in particular whom I've noted had his hands steepled for a very large portion of today, which we will talk about. So jury reading is a very, very technical and fine art, and you have to be careful as the provider of information not to cross a line and say, the jurors scratched their chin, therefore they are doubting what that witness has said. That's excessive. That's very excessive, and you have to be careful. Don't do it. Okay? So let's dive in. We have a lot to talk about, folks. Today has been a very, very jam-packed day and very long. And I think you all are going to enjoy this, honestly. It's one of those things that I was born to do this, and you guys are here for it. So let's go. First, we were having some problems with Wi-Fi, and some of the media were not even able to connect, which was kind of interesting. But that was eventually solved, and day one started off mostly without a hitch. The judge walked in around 8, I think it was like 8:45 a.m. I'm learning that this judge is not very good at keeping time. Today, she shows up late to the courtroom. She doesn't really have, like, Judge Escarati was just, Penny Escarati, if you remember in the Johnny Depp case, I mean, she was just like bam, 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 bam. If it was like 9:01, she's already on the bench. You know what I mean? If she says start time is 9 o'clock. But she didn't really indicate yesterday the start time. She said when the jurors needed to be there. So it's like, well, are the jurors going to be summoned immediately? Or is she going to give them a little bit of time? I mean, so anyway, that's what we saw today. And right about 5 minutes to 9 local time, the lawyers and the judge are finally ready for the jury to come in. 11 women, 5 men coming in to decide Alec Baldwin's fate. Now, the judge, of course, in the beginning of any trial, needs to instruct the jury on what they're there for. She tells them that they're there to decide the manslaughter charge that Alec Baldwin has been charged with when he killed Hutchins, and she gives a brief recitation of the facts. Some of you who may have have been watching the trial, you know exactly what she said, but that's essentially, in a nutshell, what she said. Meanwhile, by the way, In the parallel universe, in the Karen Reed case, let's just jump to that for just a moment because that's a doozy. A fourth juror, Juror D, has now come forward stating that they're willing to testify, if need be, to tell under oath that all 12 of them were unanimous on charges 1 and 3. And that's murder 2 and leaving the scene of an accident, and that they were only undecided on charge 2. I said 1 and 2. I think I meant 1 and 3. Yeah, 1 and 3. They're unanimous, not guilty, and charge 2 is the only one they hung on. But the judge instructed them that only if you can agree on everything across the board. So they didn't know what to do. But the juror will happily testify that they were there, and all 12 of them voted unanimously not guilty. Murder 2 was off the table. Leaving the scene was off the table. Also, that juror said that they felt rushed out of the courtroom and they felt rushed out of the courthouse. They spoke briefly with the judge, and before they knew it, they were on the bus to leave. So let's get back to Alec Baldwin. The jury is reminded by Judge Summer that they are not to visit the scene, not to make experiments, Google, research anything about the case, standard procedure. And then the prosecution begins their opening statements. It seems that the prosecution's theme, although a little bit loose, in my opinion, but still strong enough to hold, is essentially when somebody plays make-believe with a real gun, lives are lost. Remember, involuntary manslaughter, which we'll talk about at the end of this video, the definition and how it applies in this case, in my opinion, given these facts, is really easy to prove, and you will see why. So stay tuned. Don't go anywhere. The jury is alert and paying attention during the prosecutor's opening. It was Ms. Johnson, I believe, which is Morrissey's second chair. The prosecutor puts up Hutchins's photo wearing a red hat while on the set of Rust. And I think she's kind of trying to play on their emotions a little bit. Not surprising, but, you know, so people, we have a dead person. Why not use the fact that they used to be alive and this is what they looked like? They don't, because the prosecutor knew that they were going to play the Lapel video of the deputies, and it's going to show, you know, Miss Hutchins on the floor dying. And she did not want the jury's first impression of Ms. Hutchins to be that. She wanted them to see her in her natural habitat, wearing a cowboy hat on the set of Rust. They were, again, they're just simply paying attention. They didn't seem to be in any way, shape, or form bothered or swayed or influenced, in my opinion, by that tactic. It's a standard prosecutorial tactic. Prosecutors do this all the time. And it is what it is. Now, the one thing I found interesting is right out of the gate, as the prosecutor is doing her opening statement, Alec's lawyers are sitting upright and are listening to the prosecutor's opening. Meanwhile, Alec is like hunched over and he's like at the table and he's like writing something. I don't know. I didn't like it at all. I just, he's giving me like the wrong impression already. He's giving me the wrong impression. I don't like how he's approaching it. I think he's trying to send a message that he's bored, he shouldn't even be there, but that is not how you act in front of a jury. You have to take it seriously no matter how bored you are, how innocent you think you are. The jury will sometimes convict you out of principle if they think you're just a jackass who thinks that they're above everybody. Believe me, I have seen it with my own eyes. I had a client who testified on the witness stand. It was a DUI case, as most of mine are so far. And he asked me, he said, look, Larry, I will take that witness stand and I will tell them, look, line up 5 shots. That was the allegation, is he drank 5 shots and he drove immediately after that. He said, I'll tell them, you know, right now, line up 5 shots and I'll show them how sober I am, you know, immediately after taking them. I said, don't do it, buddy. Don't do it. Do not challenge the jury. You're going to come off as an arrogant prick. Don't do it. And he said, okay. Guess what? On cross-examination, he frickin' did it. He said, literally to the jury, he looked at him and he said, just line up 5 shots. I'll show you how it's, how it's done, how I did it. And the jury looked at him and they were like, convicted, 10 days in jail. They punished him. They punished him for his arrogance. There's nothing I could do at that point to save him. So, whether he's writing things down or simply being inattentive, I think is irrelevant. But for the most part, I believe it is improper, inappropriate, and he should have been more attentive. He should have been more on the money. The prosecutor highlights the fact that Alec wanted, quote, the biggest gun available for the movie and shows a photo of it to the jury. Now, at first, I made a mistake. And I tweeted that they weren't even looking, or maybe it was the defense. At some point, I was like, they're not even looking because they're all turned their heads to look at the thing. And then I didn't realize they have computers right in front of them. They have screens right in front of them. So they don't have to turn their heads. So if they're not turning their heads, they can be looking at the screen and seeing what is happening in front of them. So I made that mistake. I corrected it. I deleted the tweet, and I apologize for that. That was a little bit of an oversight on my part. The jurors have screens right in front of them, so they can actually be doing this while the prosecutor or the defense are showing exhibits, etc., video, and they don't need to turn their heads to the left or to the right. The screens are right in front of them. Now, the jurors appear to be listening to the prosecutor's opening very intently, and several jurors glance over at the gun photo on the wall. This is what threw me off. I'm like, why are they looking at that if they have it right in front of them? You see, it's an obvious mistake to make. The prosecutor then highlights that when the jury hears the words prop gun, they need to remember that that's not a prop gun. That is a real gun that has been used as a prop. Okay? So basically, don't let the defense fool you. It's a prop gun. It's not supposed to kill anybody. Yeah, it's a real gun. You put real bullets in it, it will kill someone. Case in point, Elena Hutchins. Some of the jurors start kind of squirming in their seats, and even one juror takes a sip of water. Another juror is looking down at that point. So I think they kind of like understood, okay, so don't let the defense play any mind games on us. We won't let them. It's maybe kind of a message, if you will. So that was very noticeable because up until that point, they were sitting very stoic. And during that portion, some of them started moving around, taking a sip of water. So obviously that affected them in some way, shape, or form. Ms. Johnson also highlights the fact that Alec put his finger on the trigger and cocked the gun when he was not supposed to do so. Not only that, some of his crew even walked out on him because of some safety breaches. So the jury is listening to that. As the prosecutor continues that Alec Baldwin cocked the hammer on the morning of Hutchinson's death, they're not moving, they're just listening very intently. Now, when she says that Gutierrez loaded the gun with dummy rounds and then gave the gun back to Alec without him, not her, him doing a safety check, one of the 6 rounds was not a dummy round, but a real round. And at this point, I can tell you could hear a pin drop in that courthouse. It was dead quiet, and the jury was completely captivated by the prosecutor. I didn't even notice anybody blinking. That's how intently listen. Excuse me. This is how intently they were listening. There we go. The movie set safety rules require every actor to treat every firearm as if it's loaded and never put the finger on the trigger unless you intend to destroy what is in front of you. And Alec violated those rules. Not only did Alec fail to follow those rules, his finger was on the trigger, even though it should not have been. When the prosecutor says that, the jury is finally seen breathing once again. She says that the bullet penetrated Hutchinson's lung and came out her back, and then hitting Mr. Sousa behind her. Sousa. Sorry, I'm mispronouncing it. The jury continues to listen very intently. Alec claimed that he didn't pull the trigger, says the prosecutor, but she also urges that this is not possible that the gun would not discharge unless you pull the trigger. And we saw that with some of the testimony later today. In the early evening hours, the late afternoon hours, when oh gosh, what was her name? I just called her witness number 4 to save time. When witness number 4 testified about the fact that she did all those tests and the gun would not fire on its own, you had to pull the trigger. And again, the room doesn't feel as tense as it was just a few moments ago. I mean, that was the creme de la creme. That was the centerpiece. That was the climax of the prosecution's opening. Was the shooting itself, the dummy rounds, and the fact that Ms. Gutierrez did not fill them with a dummy round, and one of them was a live round. Now, the prosecutor claims that the gun was examined by the prosecution's expert, whom we've heard testify today, and found no defects with the gun. They tested it, and the hammer holds without fail until he pulled the trigger. Or maybe it was another one. There are a couple of experts. The, quote, gun fired as it was designed. And again, no defects or malfunctions occurred. The gun never fired on its own. And that's what the prosecutor says. And the jury continues to listen. They also did an accidental discharge test because it could potentially damage the gun. And the gun was thereafter damaged. The prosecutor admits her weakest points, which is, I think, a very smart move. It is a brilliant move because it allows her to take the oomph out of the defense's argument later that, oh, you destroyed the gun. Well, yes, we did, but we performed those tests at the end after we performed all the previous tests that would not damage the gun. So, yes, we did not give you an opportunity, Mr. Defense Lawyer Alec Spiro, to do your own tests. But we saved the most devastating and damaging test for last. So at least we have that going for us. And again, I think that was brilliant on her part. This is probably the first time you all see me rooting for the prosecution in all the cases that we've covered because we haven't really done a whole lot of criminal. Well, no, there wasn't one other one. Sorry. Masterson. I apologize. Masterson was another time that I rooted for the prosecution because I thought he was guilty as sin. And after the first trial, when they came back, hung jury, I was very surprised. But then he was convicted the second time around. Again, I don't pick the side that is my side, defense attorney. I pick the side that I think is more likely to win based on the facts, the evidence, and the position that they hold and the crime that is being alleged and how easy it's going to be to prove to a jury whether or not that crime has been committed. So I don't swing where the wind blows. I don't pick the side that I am on. I pick the side that I think is more likely to win based on facts, evidence, etc. So before the testing, the prosecutor said that the gun, quote, functioned properly and was completely undamaged and was working just fine, to take away that argument from the defense saying that, well, you broke it and therefore it's useless and you screwed everything up. Now, she says that even Alex said this gun did not have any mechanical problems. And he said that in December of 2021. I think this was one of the interviews that he did. If he's that much of a dumbass to give interviews and to have a statement now attributed to him, I mean, he's really good at cooking himself, which is kind of wild. The jury continues to listen very intently and not much of a change at that point. Before the prosecutor sits down, she insists that the jury will be convinced beyond a reasonable doubt that the gun worked perfectly fine as it was designed, and that the fatal and one of the main problems on that afternoon was that Alec did not do a gun safety check, pointed the gun at another human, a human being, and pulled the trigger with reckless disregard as to Ms. Hutchins's life, end quote. She asked for a guilty verdict for involuntary manslaughter for Alec Baldwin, and the jury doesn't even flinch. Now comes Mr. Spiro. He gets up there and in a very cold New York voice begins, "This was an unspeakable tragedy, but he committed no crime." Interesting. Go on. He says real bullets are not supposed to ever be on a movie set, only dummy rounds. The jury's continuing to listen to him intently now. He says that there will be no evidence shown that Alec Baldwin had anything to do with loading a real bullet into the gun, which is a fact. It was the armor, Hannah Gutierrez Reed, who placed a real bullet into that gun, and Alec has no responsibility. But at this moment, I had to take a pause in my head, and I tweeted this. I was like, hold on a second. If Alec has truly no responsibility, what about doing a safety gun check that the prosecution just mentioned? I think that argument that Alec had no responsibility to check the gun is diluted by the fact that the prosecutor just said he should have checked the gun. Here's the problem. Remember what I said before. The simplest solution is usually going to lead to the simplest answer to a problem. And it doesn't matter if there are SAG rules and regulations that don't require actors to check their guns. Common sense tells you that you should check the gun. If it's a toy gun that doesn't have the barrel is clogged and it's completely unfireable, that's one thing. You don't have to check those because the chance of that piece of equipment firing is pretty much 0.00% in any universe. But when you're handling a real firearm that can kill, it doesn't matter to a common sense individual, to a common sense observer. Are you on a movie? You're on the time crunch. Look, buddy, that's a you problem. That's not a us problem. You need a gun. Hey, give me a gun. Give me. Hey, I need to. Come on, let's go. Next. Give me. Nobody cares. Nobody cares. The general public is not in the movie industry. They watch movies. They don't care about how the sausage is made. All they want is for people to be safe. And as Chandler so aptly put earlier today, and I know she has told you guys this already, and I'm going to repeat what she said. It doesn't matter what happens on a movie set. You are an actor. You have responsibility. Check your shit, bro. That's it. The fact that I can articulate in one sentence the entire theme of the prosecution's case, check your shit before you fire. And you pointed at another person. It is too simple. It may have been complicated, it may have been convoluted for Alec in the moment because he was trying to get a lot of things done. We don't care. Nobody cares. All it took was kind of reviewing each bullet, shaking it 6 times. Oh, wait, what is this? That it doesn't shake. Hey, do you mind exchanging that for? Thank you. All right, all right, that one shakes. Okay, here we go. Let's go. How long did that take me? 10 seconds? 15 max? You really want to tell me that that was impossible and not necessary? I don't care what the rules of the Actors Guild say. I care about what the laws of the state of New Mexico, the United States of America. Go to the 10 Commandments if you have to. Those are the only ones that are applicable in this case. And you will see that the jury is not going to care about any fancy actor rules that apply only to actors acting in a magical movie set, as Mr. Spyro alluded to, that this is a fantasy land that Alec was living in. It is a cute argument. It is a fun argument, but it doesn't work in the real world because we live in a real world. And he is basically, what he kept arguing was intent today. Intent does not come into play. Even Anjanette Levy and I even exchanged a few glances because she said it herself. I'm going to give her credit where credit is due. She's like, intent is not part of the statute, is it? And I looked at her and I was like, no, it's involuntary manslaughter. And she said, yeah, exactly. It's involuntary manslaughter. So why is Spyro arguing why is he arguing intent? That it wasn't intentional, that Alec lives in a fantasy world. He's literally shooting his own client in the foot. He's shooting his own case in the foot. It makes absolute no sense to me what Spyro is doing up there. I mean, I guess that's all he's got. I'm not calling him a bad attorney. When you have a bad case, you're going to look like a bad attorney. Your case sucks. His case sucks. And he's got to work with it. He's got to work with it. He's got no choice. He's got no choice. So The armor places a real bullet in that gun. Alec has no responsibility. But why didn't he just, like I said, 6 times, shake it? You saw it on the video on the lapel camera, which we'll get to in a moment. Of one of the directors was like, all you have to do, bro, just shake it. There is an argument that Spyro made that Alec received a cold gun. It's just a prop gun and could do no harm, quote unquote. And as Spyro argues, in my opinion, is not very, very strong argument. Alec had a duty to check the gun before using it in any capacity. Period. The end. You can't trust another individual by virtue of him trusting Hannah Gutierrez Reed with giving him a cold gun. He now is culpable himself by trusting another individual, not giving him what was purported to be given to him. End of story. The defense plays a portion of the movie Rust to the jury, and Alec Baldwin's character is seen wounded in that church, sitting on a bench. And the jurors are paying attention, but I noticed not a single juror scratched their head. They really don't care about this fantasy land. They care about facts, folks. They seem to care about facts. So we have a really good jury. There's 8 people seated in the back row, 8 people seated in the front. I believe there are 3 men in the back, 5 women, and in the front we have 2 men and 6 women. I believe that's accurate. The defense goes on by saying the barrier between real and imaginary is very thin, and he urges the defense attorney. I'm sorry. The barrier between real and imaginary is very thin, as he urges, for the benefit of the viewer. And the jury appears to be listening intently. As the defense begins talking about other Westerns, for example, like Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, I think you mentioned some others, the prosecution suddenly objects and asks to approach the bench. So I didn't understand what that was about, but it looks like the attorney, Spyro, moves on to his next point. So seems like he lost that objection. Now again, cold gun was called on set, and a few jurors appear to be taking notes because Spyro began repeating himself. And this is where I thought he started to lose the jury, because when you don't have a whole lot, you start repeating yourself. The prosecution never repeated itself. It was very direct. It was very to the point. It was very invested in the argument that they were making. They did not seem frazzled at any point or in any way. They never seemed to be kind of deviating from from their main theme. But the defense just kept like going in circles. Okay, a cold gun was called out on set. And there are no live rounds on a movie set. Well, apparently there are. And somebody didn't check. And again, I come back to my personal opinion that both Hannah Gutierrez Reed and Alec Baldwin are both culpable here. Because Hannah Gutierrez Reed didn't check the rounds before she gave him the gun. And Alec Baldwin didn't do a subsequent safety check. And I think to argue that he didn't have to because the SAG rules don't require is bonkers. To me, it's just absolutely bonkers. Like I said, as Chandler said, there's a reason why accidents don't happen of such magnitude on movie sets, because safety checks are performed at every stage of the gun handling procedure. I mean, it's insane that there are people out there saying, let him off the hook. He's not responsible. It was somebody else. Like he's just an innocent actor, just doing his actor role. I mean, that was Spyro's argument from the beginning. It was absolutely mind-boggling to listen to that. And I personally, if I was a juror, I wasn't buying it. And I'm a criminal defense attorney. So take that with a grain of salt. Spyro then plays the 911 tape to the jury, and you can hear people say 2 people were accidentally shot by a prop gun on a movie set, end quote. Again, It sounds cute. It's the best defense I think he can put on, perhaps. Maybe he can do something better. I don't know. I'm obviously not the lawyer on this case. But is that enough to overcome if he was charged with murder, it would be acquittal 100%. If Alec Baldwin was charged with intentionally killing someone, I would have acquitted 10 times out of 10. 11 times out of 10, I would have acquitted. But involuntary manslaughter is a very difficult hurdle to overcome. It is, and again, I'm previewing what I'm going to do at the end of this video, strict liability crime. We'll talk about what that is in a moment. Strict liability offense. Now, some of the jurors, when he says that, 2 people were accidentally shot by a prop gun on a movie set, I've noticed at least 3 of the jurors kind of furrow their eyebrows as they listen to the 911 call. I don't know if they were doubting it, if they were confused, if they didn't understand. I attribute to that what you will. But that's what happened. The armorer says that she is sorry, but there's no word from Alec. And this is important because this was happening live. Excuse me, as the shooting and killing has just happened. Police enter the scene. They're all wearing lapel cameras. This way you have a moment-by-moment play of what happened in this case. Look at the evidence of what the people of the movie set Rust did and said that day. So the defense attorney is doing a very smart move. He's saying, look, the witnesses are biased. Essentially, he's implying. He should have said this, I think. But he implied it. I don't know if the jury got it or not. I got it, but I'm a criminal defense lawyer. I understand how this stuff works. I wonder if the jury got the fact that he's basically trying to point to the fact that pay attention to what actually happened that day. The unbiased, unedited video that they have of all this stuff, and basically don't have so much focus on the witnesses in trial because they're biased witnesses who want a conviction. That's the part he didn't say, and I think he should have. But it is what it is. That's lost on him. He's not going to get that back. Spyro then changes the focus of the jury from where the prosecution went. Not a single juror was taking notes, but they were appeared to be listening very intently. Now comes something very interesting. Spyro argues that, quote, they never secured the prop truck for several days. Basically, the mistakes that were never investigated in the movie set. Are they trying to argue that somebody planted a live round? If you're going to go that route, you better have some evidence because the jury is never going to buy that theory. I would never buy that theory without any evidence. And they play a portion of the lapel camera during opening of the people on scene and the police officers arriving to investigate. The prosecutor, I think it was Morrissey. I can't remember if it was Johnson or Morrissey. I think it was Johnson actually. She's unhappy with it and asked to approach. The jury just seems to be looking around the room confused, as one might expect. They just want to figure out what's going on. Alec was just acting, and his crew let him down. Alec committed no crime. He just kept repeating that same phrase. His crew let him down? Are you pointing that, like, Gutierrez? It was Gutierrez. It was, somebody else. It was the director. It was Souza. Like, pointing the finger at someone else is never a good defense. Never a good defense. But if that's all he's got, that's all he's got. Then that's all he's got. He argues that they turned from, quote, one shiny object to another shiny object, and he points at Alec. Meaning Alec is the celebrity. He's a shiny object. They want culpability. And they simply decided to come after him because he's a celebrity. The jury is listening intently, but they don't really have much of a reaction to it. Now comes a very interesting point. Spyro says the SAG guidelines, that's the Actors Guild, do not require actors to check their guns. See? For the first time in his entire opening, he says something that is contradictory to New Mexico law. Because carelessness can be defined in two different ways. Number one, failure to follow the rules and laws of the state of New Mexico, or failure to follow the SAG guidelines. The problem is, again, SAG guidelines nobody cares about in the real world. In the movie world, yes, absolutely. They are pertinent, they're relevant, and they're applicable. But when it comes to when it comes to the real world and not a movie set, where a jury is deciding the fate and future of another human being as to whether or not he's going to be going to prison for up to 18 months and paying, I think, up to a $15,000 fine or something like that. I think it's I forget what the actual amount is, but we're more concerned about the jail time. Nobody really cares about the fine. He can pay the fine 10 times over and be okay. He would have been happy with it. It's the jail time. It's the prison time, 18 months that Hannah Gutierrez is serving right now based on her conduct, which, again, I also think is 100% deserved. She should have checked the gun. She failed to check the gun. Alec failed to check the gun. They are equally culpable and both need to be locked up for it. So when the defense attorney said that the SAG guidelines do not require actors to check their guns, and Alec has even been in contact with the Hutchins family, he doesn't need a lawyer as he committed no crime. One of the jurors kind of sat there. I don't know if it was directly related to that statement, but one of the jurors kind of sat there like this. And this is a juror I said I'm going to keep alluding to because they kept having their hands like this. An older gentleman with gray hair. At least half the jury, not half, excuse me, 1/3 of the jury's makeup are what appears to be people over the age of 60. So about 5 out of 16 are older. And one of them just kept having his hands like this, which is a sign of power, a sign that they're paying attention, and a sign that they feel they are informed on the subject, potentially. I am not certain as to what they feel confident about. Maybe they just like the power that they are a juror and they get to sit in judgment of someone else. Maybe it's the fact that they understand what is happening because they have some own personal specialized knowledge working on movie sets, or they've been on movie sets, or maybe they're an actor themselves many years ago. I have no idea. I cannot speak as to their mindset. I can only report what I have seen. And the fact is that they sat like this. Now, as he continues speaking, several of the jurors appeared to be leaning forward. So they were interested, one might say, in what he had to say. People don't usually lean forward unless they are interested. Now, when Spyro started talking about the accidental discharge test that the prosecution did and said it was useless and was not necessary and just destroyed the gun for no reason, one of the jurors actively was seen kind of leaning on her hand like this. And again, that is not a good sign. You do not want to see this when you are speaking. Like, imagine, how do you feel right now, folks? As I'm speaking to you, imagine I'm speaking to you this way, and all of a sudden I'll be reading your comments and I'm going to do this. How does that make you feel? Like, oh, thank you, John Smith 1542 for your super chat. John Smith 1542 says, like, you can tell the ambiance, the vibe, right? Boredom, indifference, don't care, right? Dismissed, disinterested. That's the vibe that that you're going to start getting from me, and that's the vibe that I got from that one juror as the defense continued at that point droning on, in my opinion. Spyro also argued that the fault was on the other people. Again, just defaulting blame, someone else. Some jurors even started scratching their chins. I don't know if they're buying into it. I don't know if they're being skeptical. I leave that up to you to decide. Now, there was another objection. Spyro started saying something about the human condition to go through grief. A prosecutor objected, and then Spyro moved on. I don't know what that was about. That made no sense to me, so I just kind of left it alone. Then Spyro began to argue that the jury is never going to hear from a lead investigator on this case or the head of security on the movie set or any actor expert to explain that Alec acted improperly. I even wrote at this point, I feel like the defense is droning on. It's time to wrap it up. The jury got it, and their eyes appear starting to appear glazed over. He then argues that the prosecution will essentially go for some type of shock value and just play the video of Alec over and over again. Him guns ablazing, running around. Come on, next gun. Come on, let's go. Kind of like they did in the Gutierrez trial. I have seen that clip from the Gutierrez trial. The Hollywood magic that he spoke of previously. And here's the thing. At this point, Spyro finishes and bathroom break is announced. And I'm just like, is that it? That's your whole opening? You sounded like Elaine Bredehoft from the Johnny Depp trial. That's not a good look. He was all over the place. There was no clear theme. And Alec didn't do it and point the finger at someone else. That's not a theme. That's passing the buck. And we know how that ends up. That is asking for failure. That is asking for a conviction. You have to have a theme. I'll be honest with you, folks. I feel like Spyro is outgunned here. When he sat down, I'm done with my opening type deal, I was a little shocked. I was expecting so much more. If people are telling me that Spyro is a professional celebrity lawyer, he works for a big prestigious firm, okay, fine. And he was great in pretrial motions. But he has no appeal to like people. In order to be an effective trial attorney, you have to be a people person. You have to understand psychology. You have to understand the human condition. You have to understand how to be charismatic, how to be an effective speaker, how to be an orator. I feel like Spyro failed in every department, folks. In every department across the board when it comes to influencing people and making an impact on behalf of his client. So I left on that morning break very dissatisfied and very hungry when it comes to the defense. I felt very satiated with the information from the prosecution. It just felt like he was rambling. Exactly, Geraldine Heil. Thank you. Spyro is off-putting and seems out of touch, says Louise Thomas. I agree. There was no panache. There was no oomph in his presentation. Now, there was a quick bathroom break, and I see Morrissey and Spyro having a brief exchange. I couldn't hear most of it, but at the end, because she turned into my direction, as Morrissey's walking away, she says, "Oh, don't talk to me about professionalism." And I was like, "Ooh, boy, that was spicy." And I kind of summarized it. I'm just going to read this all to you. Basically what I already said. My impression so far, I think the prosecution had a good, strong, succinct argument. It's easy to understand. It's not complicated. It's simple. The defense, on the other hand, droned on and on about Alec didn't commit a crime and punted on somebody else, that he followed the proper guidelines, and both myself and the jury, I think, got lost on his theme. It did not appear very succinct nor strong, and I'm not sure that placing the blame on someone else, the armorer, the director, the prosecution not doing their job, is going to be enough to overcome the simplicity of the fact that that Baldwin committed the act. He failed to check the gun for live bullets and fired it at a person, period. It's not an easy case by any means. I think the defense does have a shot. But even though the burden is on the prosecution to prove their case beyond a reasonable doubt, I still believe that the burden is equally heavy on the defense to show that Alec is not culpable in any way criminally on an involuntary manslaughter charge. That's not easy. Like I said, we'll talk about strict liability and what that means in a moment. In a little bit. There was some argument that about the Lapel video, some hearsay coming in after the break. They sorted it all out. It was fine. They sorted it out. Now, the first witness for the prosecution was Nicholas LaFleur with the Santa Fe County Sheriff's Office. That dude is what is that phrase? Still
green under the gills.
Green
still wet behind the ears.
Wet behind the ears. That's what I was looking for. That mofo is still wet behind the ears, folks. And look, nothing against him. He's a young cat. He was so. If you noticed in the video when he's like, Mr. Baldwin, I'm gonna need you to like go sit in the truck, and Mr. Baldwin's basically like, nah. And then he's like, Mr. Baldwin, please don't talk to any witnesses. And he's like, okay. And then he proceeds to talk to other witnesses. Like, he felt much more empowered, much more above Mr. LaFleur. That was kind of weird to watch. And then the question even came out as to why he didn't just like command Baldwin. And I think he was just scared of him. He was intimidated by such a, at the end of the day, no matter how you look at him, whether you like him or not, he's still a grade A celebrity, class A celebrity. He's known worldwide. The name Baldwin resonates with, I don't know, probably every single person on the planet in some capacity. It doesn't matter which Baldwin you're talking about. Now, the jurors were listening very intently to LaFleur on direct examination. And LaFleur admits that he has never been to a scene where there are nearly 100 people already on scene. Like normally it's just 2 or 3. So he was very overwhelmed. And then the prosecution began showing the video of his lapel. I think that's why they called him first, because he was kind of the first on scene, which makes sense. It's the smart move. If I was the prosecutor, I'd probably do the same thing. It kind of sets the stage. He arrives, he walks in. There's a lot of chaos, a lot of people running around. And several jurors you can see very visibly start shifting uncomfortably in their seats at the sight of the footage, especially with Ms. Hutchins laying on the ground, dying, literally, as we know she's now deceased. If they had saved her life, it would be one thing. Okay, a person is shot, wounded, that's uncomfortable. But you're literally watching a person that is alive, and you don't know exactly when, but in the back of your mind, very shortly thereafter, is no longer going to be alive. And that plays an impact. That plays a huge impact, I think, on people. And you can tell the jurors definitely felt it. Now, another person who pretended to feel it was none other than Alec's wife, Hilaria. What a name. What a name. She put her hand over her chest, and I caught her in the moment of blinking, which I thought was like perfect. She's just like, oh, dear me. Like, oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. I swear to God, folks. I mean, I know you're trying to play on the emotions of the jury. She is very strategically placed. She's sitting in the attorney row. She's not sitting with the media. She's sitting directly behind her husband with the public. Actually, again, she's not sitting in the public row. She's actually sitting in the attorney row with the attorneys, and she's not an attorney. And she is reacting to the video of Hutchins receiving first aid. And I'm like, are you freaking kidding me? You're going to be like oh God, oh goodness me. Just sit there and look pretty like you're supposed to, okay? Because that's the only thing you're good for at this point. Her reactions, I guarantee it. When you are showing disingenuous emotion, we pick up on that stuff. If we pick up on it, the jury picked up on it. Never, ever, ever, whether you're a witness, a defendant, or a family, ever show fake emotion. Because if you're detected, they look at you and it's like, fake emotion detected. they're trying to manipulate me, it's going to have the reverse effect. Think about it. How does that affect you to know that this person is trying to manipulate you? How does that make you feel in your heart immediately? What's your first instinct? Disgusted, annoyed, displeased, right? Nobody likes to be manipulated. And the minute manipulation is detected, it's over. So her little antic did not play very well for the jury. I'm absolutely positive of that. So that was her. Again, one of the jurors that I said that one of the older jurors was steepling his hands together as the trial proceeded. Now, the prosecution elicits some testimony from LaFleur that Alec Baldwin, despite instructions from this deputy not to discuss the case or the situation with other individuals, is seen on the sheriff's lapel camera to be speaking about the incident and the situation and the case with them anyway, completely ignoring LaFleur's directive. Now, the funniest part was not even that testimony or that video where he's doing it. It was looking at the jury and their reaction to it. You could clearly tell. That one was obvious. That one was unmistakable. Quite a few of them had the look on their face, that whelp, that famous whelp look that a lot of you may remember from the Johnny Depp trial when Amber Heard was testifying and they were like, it's that same look, folks. It's unmistakable. You cannot miss it. You cannot mistake it for anything. It is like the final like tombstone on your grave. That's the last look you want to see when the state is presenting a case against you or you're testifying on your own behalf and the person you're talking to goes, not good at all. Now, initially, LaFleur was told that there were 7 people in the church when the shooting occurred, but later on the stand, the deputy claimed that it later turned out to be that there were more people inside the church. A couple of jurors frowned at that information. They didn't like that, it seemed like. One of the directors is seen on the lapel camera doing that shake test, if you all remember that. A gesture for testing if the bullets are real or dummy bullets. Basically, you know, hindsight 2020, probably telling Alec, like, look, all you had to do was this, man. Probably. And if they are dummy bullets, they'll make a sound when you shake them, whereas the real ones will not make such a sound. And Alec is seen speaking to him, despite the fact that he was told by Deputy LaFleur not to do so. A couple of jurors brought their hands to their mouths and appeared to be stroking their chins at that point. So they probably were interested in that testimony because that shows, again, something Alec should have done but didn't do. If I were to summarize, if I were to summarize the prosecution's theme today, and maybe for the rest of the case, is shake test. That's all you had to do, bro. 15-second shake test, all of this would have been avoided. You didn't do a shake test? Well, now serve prison time. That's it. That's the whole case. Shake test. Did you do a shake test? No. Why not? Too lazy? Because you were rushing? Because you wanted to film? You didn't want to spend time? You didn't want to waste time? Well, now you wasted a person instead of wasting 15 seconds. On cross-examination, the defense begins. Spyro asks if it appeared that Alec Baldwin was an actor out of character. LaFleur answers yes, and immediately after that, the prosecutor objects, and then the defense launches right back into that questioning after they have a brief sidebar, so the prosecutor probably lost that objection. Spyro highlights the fact that LaFleur was dispatched to a scene where there was an accidental discharge by a prop gun. LaFleur claims that he did not want to use the word accident. Several jurors are seen writing things down in their notepads. There was a lawyer present on the Rust movie set, says Spiro, but Baldwin never asked to speak to his lawyer. LaFleur agrees. One of the jurors was palming her head in her hand, like so, during this testimony. Again, I don't know if she was tired. Maybe she wanted lunch. It was already like noon, I think, around this time, give or take. Yeah, it was almost lunchtime, so I don't know if she was tired or if that testimony was influencing her in any way. LaFleur admits that he has never been to a homicide investigation where people come up and shake the shooter's hand and huddle around them. Several jurors appear kind of perplexed at that testimony. Because it's true, it's one of those rare things where a killer is corralled rather than scoffed at and arrested. And which brings me to my next point, right before we break for lunch. Mr. Baldwin was never arrested, correct? Asks Spiro. LaFleur agrees. And there was never any intention behind the act. But LaFleur says he cannot agree with that statement. Again, intent is irrelevant, and we'll talk about that in just a moment. Now, upon our return to the courtroom, after lunch, the lawyers appear to be arguing over some matter outside the presence of the jury. It appears quite contentious. Ms. Morrissey does not appear pleased with the discourse. I don't think she ever is, but especially then. And they seem to not be able to agree on something that has allegedly already been previously stipulated to. Those words I heard, something about previously stipulated to. So take that with a grain of salt. The jury is filed back in, and LaFleur is still on cross-examination by Spiro. The 911 tape is played. Again, we hear we were rehearsing and it, meaning the gun, went off. In the 911 call, there was no mention of Alec Baldwin at all or his involvement in the shooting where 2 people were injured. LaFleur agrees. And there's one thing I've noticed now that I had a chance to see Spiro in action. Spiro is a New York hired gun. He is used to a New York audience. He is used to a New York jury, and he's coming off as a thug to these small town, Santa Fe, New Mexico residents and jurors. Several whelp faces were scattered across their faces as Spiro was objected to on multiple occasions during LaFleur's cross-examination. And especially when the judge told the jury to disregard his question about whether LaFleur knows if there is another witness testifying for the state. What kind of question is that? Every criminal defense lawyer on the planet knows that you do not cross witnesses. Oh, do you know if so-and-so is going to testify? First of all, it's borderline hearsay because it's like, well, do you know what they're going to say? Okay, well, then don't ask what they're going to say. You're going to ask, do you know if they're testifying in this case or not? Who does that? Come on. Every criminal defense lawyer worth their salt knows not to ask that question. And he is inviting, he's literally asking to be stomped on. And the jury does not like it. They don't like it when he asks questions. And immediately the judge is literally saying, please disregard that question and pay no attention to it. Of course, the jurors are going to have their usual whelp faces on. It was unbelievable. I could not understand it. I mean, this is the top caliber lawyer that we were expecting to hear from and listen to. It made no sense to me. No sense to me at all. But it is what it is. Second, like I said, it was an improper question. Spiro is clearly outgunned. Morrissey knows how to talk to this jury, and it's not a good look for Spiro. Sometimes objections are good if the facts are on your side, but not here. Here, they are not working to his advantage. And I started to notice something. Even though I don't like Morrissey's attitude, apparently it's starting to prove lethal. On redirect examination, in just a few words, She absolutely destroys Spyro's cross like that. First, she says, intent plays no role in an involuntary homicide, such as this case, right? And LaFleur is like, yep. Then she continues, and I swear, I kind of froze. I remember that several jurors appear to have a very frustrated and upset look on their faces as Morrissey goes through that CAD report, the computer-assisted dispatch log, and it talks about DUI and some commercial stuff, and I'm like, what? I thought that was the CAD from this case. Did Spyro use a CAD from a different case? Did Spyro use a CAD that was crossing multiple cases? Because he used it. He said it says accident here and it says accident here. First of all, again, accident is not a good defense, first of all. And second of all, now you look like a liar and a scam artist to this jury. Not only that, he never corrected her on recross. There was never any recross. Now, I don't know if recross is allowed in this courtroom. I haven't seen a single witness being recrossed, which would be ridiculous. I think recross is mandatory, especially in the case of this caliber. But my God, the fact that Spyro never explained to the jury, oh, by the way, this is a CAD report that has a lot of information. He looks like he's playing hide the ball. That's the prosecutor's job. The prosecutor is the one who's supposed to appear like they're not giving you everything and they're missing information and they're withholding information from you. If the defense looks like they're withholding information from you, oh, that's not a good look, folks. That was atrocious. I remember I turned to Anjanette Levy and I was like, are you seeing this? Is he not going to like, I was like beside myself as a criminal defense lawyer. I'm literally just like losing my mind going, how do you not do this? It's literally rule number 1. When you get wiped, like somebody takes and wipes the floor with you on redirect, get up there and explain if you haven't done already. And clearly he hasn't, and he still hasn't corrected it. I have no words, folks. This is one of the worst defense attorneys' work I have ever seen in my life. And the jury, to Baldwin's horror, I'm sure, was absolutely captivated by Morrissey's, the prosecutor, redirect examination of LaFleur. Again, the last thing you want to see. The absolute last thing you want to see as a defendant. It's a catastrophe, folks. It is an absolute catastrophe to the defense. Then we have the commander, and I apologize, I forgot his name. To me, he was just commander or witness number 2. What is it? Bienvenidos?
Mateo, Benvenidos.
Benvenidas. I thought Benavides. Benavides. Bienvenidos. I'm such a racist.
No, you just don't speak Spanish.
Yo hablo español un poquito, sí, yo claro.
It's not your first language.
No, no es not mi lengua primera, es mi lengua treintaria, no sé. Anyway, Benavides. So Benavides gets up there. I'm just gonna call him commander, if you guys don't mind. Lieutenant commander. Witness number 2. We can just do that. So witness number 2 gets up there and he doesn't even hesitate. He gets up there and he goes, yeah, I was dispatched to a location for an accidental shooting. Boom. I literally sat there and I'm like, if I was the defense lawyer, I'd just be like, I think I'm going to lose this. Huge blow to the defense. I was dispatched to a location for an accidental shooting. He's very confident and he's looking at the jury as he testifies. He makes eye contact with them. He has nothing to hide. And it shows immediately, nothing like, for example, to compare apples and oranges, Michael Proctor in the Karen Reed case. I mean, that guy was just the most disgusting, vile human being on the planet. This guy is just like, yo, what's up? This is what happened. This is me. You have any questions? Nope. Thank you very much. Can I go now? That's it. That was literally his whole testimony. He has nothing to hide. They play his lapel. The jury is eating out of his hand. He calls it a crime scene because he's got 2 victims lying on the ground, and the jurors are simply captivated by his charisma and are listening very intently. He asks for the prop guy as he arrives on scene because, as he testifies, he, quote, wanted to know where the gun was because he did not want the gun to be used again on somebody else. And the jury seems to be taking copious notes of that. One of the jurors indicates that they cannot see the time frame on the lapel camera since the state, I guess, fast forwarded, or they want to know what time of day it seems. It's an interesting note, and rarely do you get a request from a jury because they're like, they normally just sit there very quietly. So that was kind of like an interesting and nice change. I really like that. But maybe they feel comfortable. It's their home turf, Santa Fe, small town. They're just like, hey, excuse me, I can't see. But they resolve that very quickly, and they elicit testimony from him to fix the issue. And I think he does a great job at it. He puts on gloves to take out the gun. That wasn't really interesting because the gun wasn't very, they didn't like take it out and show it to them. It was mostly like the photo of it. Now, he was furnished 2 white boxes of 45 caliber long Colt dummy rounds by Gutierrez. And some of the jurors appeared very interested in this testimony. One was even stroking her chin, while several others were leaning forward in their chairs. Hannah Gutierrez looked very embarrassed and guilty on camera. If the jury in her trial, I wrote, saw this video, because I didn't see that trial, unfortunately. I was busy doing other things. And I assume the jury in her case has. And her saying, oh my God, F-U-C-K, are they okay? While looking all frustrated and flustered, I'm not surprised she got convicted. She feels guilty for the harm that has come to those 2 people. And she keeps saying that she is nervous and scared. And I wonder how this jury is going to make of it. What this jury is going to make of it. The prosecution has to show this part of the video. Otherwise, the defense will have a field day with it. Several jurors appeared perplexed as Hannah exclaims right on camera, why the F-U-C-K are there entry wounds? As those are obviously supposed to be dummy rounds. And at that moment, the prosecutor pauses the video and changes direction, which is kind of interesting. I thought the defense was going to play that video from that moment, but they never did. I thought that was really damning to the prosecution because it looked like she's the culpable party. Alec is just sitting there quietly, peacefully sitting there, smoking a cigarette, talking to people, wrongfully or not wrongfully, however you want to make of it. But he is just sitting there. He's not running around screaming, paranoid like she is. And I think the prosecutor was afraid that the jury will begin to believe that Hannah is the culpable party and not Alec. And I think the defense, Spyro, really missed an opportunity here. He should have played that video from the moment the prosecutor stopped, as Hannah's running around like a maniac and continues to be nervous, if that's the case, because she started to say some things and she was cut off. And I think that was very damning to the prosecutor's case. And the fact that the Spyro never completed Hannah Gutierrez's statement on the video is really damaging to his client's case. He had a golden opportunity, and for some reason, he didn't take it. And I have no explanation as to why. He just didn't. Then Spyro begins the cross-examination. And I'm like, we better see some fireworks. And unfortunately, we never did. He highlights the fact that the witness would not be walking away from weapons in a normal scene, but he felt comfortable because this was a movie set. And when he says that, he gives a quick glance. It was kind of interesting. He gave a quick glance at the jury. I don't know what that was about. Maybe kind of see their reaction. But they appeared to be completely unmoved. And here's the best part. You remember in the Karen Reed case, I'll tell you this. This is how you know where a person's attention is. Imagine me talking to you all, and I'm just gonna change my position for just a moment. And imagine me talking to you, and I'm talking to you all like this, like, yeah. So this happened in the case, and this happened in court, and that witness testified, and this witness testified, and yeah. Anyway, so you see, what? How does that make you feel? It makes you feel like I'm not interested. I'm not captivated. I'm not here to have your attention, or you've not earned my attention. Very casual, right? Way too casual. It feels weird. Well, let me tell you, in the Karen Reed case, when I was there physically in the courtroom, when Lally was speaking, the jury was doing exactly that. They were doing that awkward, like they were paying attention to the witness and kind of every so often kind of glancing at Lally. Meanwhile, when Jackson was up there, I mean, the jury was just like this, looking at Jackson, because Jackson was the powerhouse in the room. He was the arbiter of information. He was the provider of education. He was the provider of information. He was the informer, the informant, the educator, etc. And then they would look at the witness and then back at Jackson. And then back at the witness and then back at Jackson. Today's jury treated Spyro like they did Lally in the Karen Reed case, is the best way I can describe it. It's just this permanently turned, looking at the witness, and then only periodically glancing at Spyro doing his cross-examination. The last time I saw such behavior came at the Karen Reed case, like I said, but with a defense attorney, was in the Flores case, the Kristen Smart murder trial in Salinas, California. When Paul Flores's attorney would so much as begin standing up to do an objection, the jury would immediately cringe and be like, oh God. I don't know if this is where we're headed, but for Spyro's sake, I hope not. Because it looks like we're headed in that direction, folks. The jury just doesn't like him. The jury just doesn't like his style, and they don't like how he's approaching this case, in my opinion. Now he shows him. Spyro shows the second witness on cross a photo of a live and dummy rounds on the screen, 2 of each, and he asks if you can tell the difference between them. He says he can't. The jurors appear alert and listening to that testimony. I think that was a good point. But Spyro asks a few more questions, and they're objected to on several occasions. One of the jurors even puts her head in her hands and leans forward like this, which again is not what you want to see. She looks utterly bored. And then she appears to be opening her hands a little bit and reading her notes rather than listening to Spyro. It's a horrible sign for a defense lawyer. And another juror is kind of like leaning back in her chair, very visibly. You could tell, very disinterested. Remember I told you about the dummy rounds, that exhibit? It's a state exhibit, by the way. But because Spyro never clarified what it is, where it came from, how the prosecutor just comes out swinging on redirect. She immediately attacks the photo of the 2 dummy rounds and the 2 real rounds. And she asks, do you know where this came from? And the witness just goes, no. She goes, okay, thank you very much. She just completely eviscerated Spyro's biggest point. His biggest point, it evaporated. I got to tell you, folks, I'm nothing short of impressed of this prosecutorial work. I even made the joke that there are now 2 crime scenes in this case. The church, where Hutchins and Souza were shot, and now the defense table, where Spyro is sitting. I think he was getting absolutely gutted on redirect. Some people didn't agree with me, but again, this is my own personal opinion as a litigator and a criminal defense attorney. So take it with a grain of salt. I even tweeted something I thought was funny. Does Alec think it's too late to change lawyers? I would be happy to jump in. Honestly, I think I could do a better job because I can't understand. Is Spyro a rookie trial lawyer? Is he just off his game? Because he lacks confidence. He's unsure of himself. He's stagnating in the charisma department. And so far, I'm highly unimpressed with his defense work. I just don't get it. I may not like Morrissey's attitude, but the jury listens to her when she speaks. She is good at putting a spell on them. She captivates them. She keeps their attention. Like I said, I really don't like her attitude, but it works on the jury. She knows her audience. Time will tell, but I stand my ground. Morrissey, I may not like her, but I respect her, and I think the jury feels the same way. Just a gut feeling. Then that third police officer takes the stand, begins testifying for the prosecution. Every single juror pretty much turned their chair to look at the witness, or either turn their chair or turn their body. They appear to be very interested, and they're paying attention to the prosecution. And that was a very brief one, direct cross. And then with the fourth witness, the female, most chairs are turned in their bodies, but not as many. The jurors periodically glance at Morrissey as she's asking questions of her witness. Remember, folks, trials are about facts. Sure, of course, facts and evidence. But they're also about the lawyers. The more convincing lawyer will usually win. And so far, it appears to be Morrissey. We'll see if that changes. Her style, by the way, of asking questions as if she's teaching a 5-year-old is coming across as if she's an educator, and the jurors love educators because they're hungry for information. They want to know what's up. Like when I defend my clients, I try to be the smartest and most informed person in the room. That's how I win my cases. They look at the prosecutor and they go, wow, you didn't give me anything and you're hiding stuff. And they look at me and they go, wow, you taught me everything I need to know. And sometimes you win on that. Not always, but sometimes, usually. That's how Spyro should be coming off, but he's not. Instead, it appears that Morrissey's the one stealing the spotlight. And by the way, I learned today that she's also a criminal defense attorney. Not surprising. Not surprising at all. I am very... You could smell it on her now that I think about it some more. The last time I met such a formidable prosecutor was Kyle Williamson. Shout out to you, Kyle. I know you're probably never going to see this, but Kyle Williamson in LaRue County, Kentucky. Shout out to you, brother. You kicked my ass, not once, but twice. The second one was a hung jury, and I ended up winning it. You were there, you know. But you taught me a lot. You definitely taught me a lot, and my head is off. It's the prosecutors that kick your ass and are good at it are the ones that you remember. And Morrissey is definitely one of those special prosecutors that I'm going to remember. Then, again, this female witness testifies that a dummy round can be shaken to hear whether or not it is a live round or not. And 3 jurors immediately bring their hands to their mouths, and one of them brings it to his temple with this sign of interest, sign of intrigue. I remember when Johnny Depp was testifying, a couple of jurors did this on when they brought him up on oh goodness, a rebuttal on rebuttal. When he was doing his rebuttal testimony, and I was in the courtroom. That is a good sign that you want to see for the defense, not the prosecution. Again, the whole shake test. The whole case is about shake test. Literally, this case summarized in 2 words: shake test. Did you do it? No. Why not? Because you were lazy. Then guilty. It's so simple, folks. I just can't overcome this hurdle. I can't overcome this hurdle. And it's getting more and more simple by the day. Alec Baldwin is seen shaking his head to his lawyers as that fourth witness is testifying about gunpowder and the dummy rounds or something like that. I don't know. I was very confused. And for the first time today that I've seen, Alec takes his glasses off and glances at the jury. I don't know what to make of that. Now, if the jury at the end of the day thinks that Baldwin had a duty to check each round and shake it and he failed to do so, they will convict. End of story. At some point, the attorneys were going through exhibits. It was getting very, very late in the day. It was like 4:10 p.m. local time. And I thought they were going to do another 50 minutes of testimony. Luckily, they only did about half an hour because I think the judge kind of saw that the jury was getting ready to go home. They really wanted to go home. And so that happened. Now, let's talk about, I know I've been teasing you guys with this, so let's finally talk about it. Involuntary manslaughter. Again, Baldwin is being charged with no intentional act. It is a strict liability offense, meaning no intent is required on the part of the killer. The statute reads, and this is the relevant portion, this is section 30-2-3 of the New Mexico amended statutes. Quote, involuntary manslaughter consists of manslaughter committed in the commission of a lawful act that might produce death in an unlawful manner or without due caution and circumspection. If you read that statute literally, which the jurors will when they go back to deliberate next Friday, again, the question is, did Alec Baldwin act without due caution and circumspection when he failed to do a shake test on the dummy rounds before putting them in the gun and firing them? When he got the gun from the armor, Hannah Gutierrez, if they think the answer is yes, and I think the answer is yes, then that's a conviction. If they're going to think the answer is no, it was entirely on Hannah Gutierrez, then they will acquit. Simple as that, folks. That's what the case boils down to. Some people have said it's not exactly a strict liability offense. It's a criminal negligence standard, which is fine. Again, I think involuntary manslaughter, maybe in different jurisdictions, can be defined differently. I pretty much see it as a strict liability offense, but I could be wrong. Maybe New Mexico is a little bit different. We can call it, just for the sake of argument, a negligence standard. I use the term strict liability because it simply makes sense to say it that way, but it doesn't have to be. And maybe New Mexico law is different. So criminal negligence is just as bad as strict liability. I wonder, people are saying that it might even be a hung jury. And that's going to be interesting if that happens, if they can't decide, kind of like in a criminal case, like Karen Reed. So, yeah, that's really all I have for you folks. This was really, really interesting day. Let me tell you, fascinating day. Absolutely fascinating. I learned so much about the courtroom, the jurors, the judge, and I will continue sharing every single day on this channel. Let's go through some super chats. We are over at what's LOSD?
Law of self-defense.
Oh, Branca. Oh my God, I'm such a moron. We're over at Law of Self-Defense looking for you and Chandler. Why would you be at Law of Self-Defense looking for me and Chandler? Kyle. We've been streaming on this channel. We'll probably do a stream together at some point. I don't know. We haven't really talked about it yet. Shirzad Morgan, thank you so much. She asks, would Alex have pointed the gun at his kids or his wife if they were on set? That's a good question. He was angry that day because half the crew walked out on him the day before. He is arrogant, and he admitted to pulling the trigger in the first interview to jail with him. There you go. Thank you for your opinion. I really appreciate it. Cat Shit says, DUI guy, is it normal to have so many sidebars during questioning? Absolutely. Absolutely. They're just sorting things out, evidentiary issues, and so on. Can sidebars cause the jury to get distracted or bored with the testimony? Yes, of course. People want action. They want action. They want things to keep moving. If they're not getting what they want, well, they're just going to be sitting ducks. It's a fact. There's not much else to say about it. Mary Capola says, I tried telling the other law tubers today, if you didn't see the Gutierrez trial, you won't understand Morrissey's tactics. Like her or not, she knows her law and her tactics to get the win. I didn't see the Gutierrez trial, but I think I'm starting to already understand Morrissey's tactics. You don't need to be a rocket scientist to be able to decipher where she's coming from and how lethal and deadly she really is. So again, my opinion as we stand here today, subject to change until I see something different. I got a no says, not impressed with Spyro, which I'm not. Alec Baldwin in trouble, Mayday. One way to say that. Mr. Carey, aka Multi-Voice I Am, thank you so much for becoming a member. I know you've been on this channel for a while. I thought you were a member. Maybe your membership lapsed or something, but welcome and welcome back. Okay. Cabot Porter asks, did they ask the jury any questions about gun ownership? Yes, they did. During jury selection yesterday, there were quite a few questions about handling of guns, and we had a couple of jurors who came forward and said when they were little, when they were young, they were always taught about gun safety and the proper handling of guns. So yes, that was asked yesterday. And how would I defend Baldwin? Wow, you have to really drop the hammer on a $5.56 super chat, right? Asking me for my whole defense theory if I were representing Baldwin. I mean, it's a really tough case. It is a really, really, really tough case. His best bet, I think, maybe, well, juries don't decide sentencing in New Mexico. So actually, see, my tactic would have been accept liability, but minimize responsibility. Point the finger at somebody else like Spyro is doing, but I would simply change the tactic of like how sorry Alec is about the whole situation and wishes he could have done better. Because that way the jury will convict and then give him maybe like 3 months in jail. But the jury doesn't sentence in New Mexico like they do in Kentucky. See, in Kentucky, you can do that. You can play to the jury's emotions and then be like, well, convict, but don't give them like the maximum sentence. And I've had that happen. I had a successful tactic where that worked in the sentencing phase of the trial. The jury had a maximum of 1 year they could give to my client. And we almost won. I swear to God, I talked to them because they told me we almost won. We were just missing one piece, which they never got, and we didn't have it. So it was impossible to provide it to them. And they said if they had that piece, they would have acquitted. But they didn't have the piece. We didn't give it to them, obviously, because we didn't know that that's what they wanted. And even if we knew that that's what they wanted, we couldn't give it to them because we didn't have it. They said they would have acquitted across the board, but they ended up convicting, and they gave him a 4-month sentence out of 12, which I think was a huge victory. Huge. Going to jail for 4 months when they could give you 12, enormous victory. Enormous. So that's what I would do if this was in Kentucky, but it's New Mexico law, and I would need a lot more information before I could give you a comprehensive answer on that. Lady Autumn Sky also asked, would he have checked the weapon if it was a self-deletion scene? I don't know. What's a self-deletion scene? A scene that deletes itself? I don't know. Oh, Mr. Carey has been a member for a couple of months. So there you go, folks. I'm trying to keep this video under 90 minutes, so we're going to cut it off here tomorrow on this channel. We're going to be live once again, so I'll see you there. But folks,